The Wyoming sky burned gold and crimson as the sun touched the mountains. Ethan Gray sat on the porch of his ranch house, the wood warm beneath him after a day of spring heat. He was 49 now, his hair streaked with silver, his hands still strong from years of working the land. Beside him, his grandson Cole perched on the railing, legs swinging, 14 years old and full of questions. The boy had been asking about family history all evening, about how the ranch began, about how many cattle they ran in the early years, about whether the stories were true, the ones his mother Emma told him. Now Cole turned to his grandfather with that particular look children get when they're about to ask the question that matters most. "Grandpa, how did you meet Grandma? I heard you saved her in a blizzard." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. His eyes moved across the land he'd built, the barns and fence and fields that stretched toward the horizon. Somewhere inside the house, Sarah was putting supper on the table. He could hear her voice, still strong after all these years, calling to Emma and the younger grandchildren. He'd spent 17 years running from everything before that winter. 17 years convinced he didn't deserve peace or home or family. Then a baby's cry in a snowstorm changed all of it. "I did save her boy," Ethan said finally. His voice carried the weight of memory. "But it wasn't just her I saved. She saved me right back." Cole leaned forward, eyes bright. "How?" Ethan looked at his grandson and saw the same hunger for understanding he'd carried at that age. The need to know what it meant to be a man, what it meant to make choices that mattered. "Let me tell you about the winter of 1874, he said. "About a choice I made that changed everything. About your grandmother's courage, and about how sometimes the worst storms bring the greatest blessings." The boy settled in to listen. Ethan let his mind drift back across 15 years past, all the building and growing and living back, to the moment when his life split into before and after, back to a November day when the cold bit deep enough to kill. Wyoming Territory, November 18th, 1874. The blizzard came early that year, mean and hungry. Temperature dropped to 18 below zero. Wind gusted to 40 miles per hour. A man could see maybe 8 feet through the driving snow before the world turned white and empty. Ethan Gray rode through it on a mare called Ash, a solid mountain horse with a gray coat and steady nerves. He was 34 years old, then lean and weathered from years on the trail. He wore a buffalo coat against the cold wool scarf wrapped around his face, leather gloves that were good, but not good enough. The cold found ways through everything. His rifle rode in its scabbard, a Sharps 50 caliber that could drop a buffalo at 600 yards. His pistol, a Colt Peacemaker in .45, hung at his hip, a Bowie knife in his boot. Saddlebags carried jerky and hardtack and coffee in a waterproof tin. Matches wrapped in oilcloth. The tools a man needed to survive when civilization was 5 miles away and the weather wanted him dead. He'd been riding 3 days from Montana. Should have stayed in Sheridan when the storm warnings came, but he had money waiting in Frost Ridge. A cattle company owed him wages. He'd planned to collect and keep moving. That's what he did. Always moving, never staying, never letting himself care enough to stop. The storm had other plans. Ash slowed her gait, turning reluctant. Ethan could feel her fatigue through the saddle, the way her muscles worked harder with each step. The snow was deep here, drifts piling high enough to trap them if they weren't careful. He checked the sun's position by the faint glow through the clouds. Maybe 2 hours to Frost Ridge if the weather held. It wouldn't hold. He knew that. Weather like this only got worse. "Easy, girl," he murmured to the mare, his voice lost in the wind. "We're almost there." A lie, but horses responded to confidence, even when it was false. Ash's ears suddenly pricked forward. She stopped walking entirely, her whole body going alert. Ethan's hand dropped to his rifle without thought, 17 years of frontier living turning caution into instinct. Bandits used all kinds of tricks to ambush lone travelers. Baby cries, women screaming, anything to make a man drop his guard. He scanned the white emptiness, seeing nothing but snow. Then he heard it, faint at first, almost swallowed by the wind. A sound that cut through the howl of the storm like a knife through cloth. Higher, desperate, unmistakable. A baby crying. "No," Ethan said aloud. "That ain't possible." But Ash was already turning, moving toward the sound without his command. The mare had better instincts than most people. She knew distress when she heard it, knew something small and helpless needed help. Ethan let her go, staying alert. His hand never left the rifle. The sound could still be a trap, could still be men waiting in the snow with guns ready. The crying came again, weaker now, more desperate. Then it stopped. The silence was worse than any scream. Silence meant giving up, meant dying. "Go, Ash," Ethan said, kicking the mare into motion. "Go now." She surged forward through the drifts, fighting snow that tried to drag her down. The crying had stopped, but Ethan knew the direction. Straight ahead, maybe 30 yards. He spotted the shape through the white, dark against the snow, motionless, half buried. Ethan was off Ash before she fully stopped. His boots sank deep into the powder. He ran, or tried to. The snow fought him with every step, tried to trap him, tried to slow him down. He kept pushing, kept moving until he reached them. A woman lay curled on her side in the fetal position. Her arms were locked around a bundle pressed tight against her chest. Her face had gone pale as bone. Her lips showed blue and purple, the color of cyanosis. Frost clung to her eyelashes like tiny diamonds, like nature's cruel jewelry. Her feet were bare, completely bare, black with frostbite. Blood had frozen in the tracks behind her, a trail that spoke of agony. She'd walked through this hell without shoes. A bruise spread dark purple across her right jaw. 3 days old, maybe, consistent with a closed fist blow. Someone had hit her hard. The bundle in her arms moved. A thin, desperate wail cut through the air. The baby was still alive. Ethan dropped to his knees beside them. His hands moved with the efficiency of old training, checking the woman's pulse at her throat. There, faint, thready, barely present. Her skin was ice cold. Her breathing came shallow, maybe 8 breaths a minute, dangerously slow. He estimated her core temperature somewhere around 89 degrees. Severe hypothermia, stage 3. Without help, she had maybe an hour, maybe less. He pressed 2 fingers to the baby's neck next. The pulse was rapid, too rapid. Dehydrated, hypothermic but less severely than her mother. Maybe stage 2, still shivering, still fighting. The baby wore good clothes, quality stitching. Someone had loved this child, had dressed her carefully, then abandoned her to freeze. "Ma'am," Ethan said, shaking the woman's shoulder gently. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Nothing. Her head lolled, revealing more bruising. Wrist marks, ligature marks. Someone had tied her up recently. His fingers found her ribs, felt the tenderness of old fractures poorly healed. This wasn't the first time. Wasn't even close. The baby screamed again. Raw, hoarse, a voice nearly gone from hours of crying. "Jesus Christ," Ethan muttered. He tried to lift the baby. The woman's arms wouldn't release. Even unconscious, even dying, her muscles had locked in a death grip around her child. A mother's last act of protection. "Ma'am, I ain't going to hurt her," Ethan said, knowing she couldn't hear. "I'm trying to help." He worked carefully, prying frozen fingers loose one by one. The woman whimpered a thin, broken sound that told him she was still fighting somewhere deep inside, still holding on. "That's good," he said softly. "You keep fighting, both of you keep fighting." He finally freed the baby and pulled her against his chest. She was so light, too light. When had she last eaten? When had she last been warm? Ethan shrugged out of his buffalo coat. The cold hit him immediately, cutting through his wool shirt like knives. He wrapped the coat around the baby. She nearly disappeared inside the heavy fur. Her crying faded to weak whimpers. Then her tiny hand somehow found his thumb, gripped it with surprising strength. Something shifted in Ethan's chest. A feeling he didn't recognize, didn't want to recognize. He'd spent 17 years building walls against feelings like this, against caring, against connection. He pushed it aside. Feelings didn't save lives. Action did. "Ash," he called. The mare was waiting, patient as always. "We got company, girl. Need you to be gentle." Getting the woman onto the horse was the hardest part. Ethan laid the bundled baby in a hollow in the snow, hating every second of it. Those blue eyes watched him, trusting, believing he'd come back. He returned to the mother, lifted her. She weighed almost nothing, maybe 95 pounds. Starved for weeks, probably. Her dress had been fine once. Quality fabric, careful tailoring. Now it was torn and stained and utterly inadequate for a Wyoming winter. He got her across the saddle, secured her as best he could. Then he retrieved the baby and climbed up behind them both. The baby went against his chest, his left arm holding her secure. His right hand managed the reins and steadied the woman. Hold on, he said to Ash. Frost Ridge ain't far. We're going to make it. Another lie, but what else could he say? The ride was the longest of Ethan's life. Every minute felt like an hour. Every yard felt like a mile. He held the baby against his chest, feeling her small body trembling with cold and exhaustion. The woman lay slack across the saddle, her breathing so shallow, he had to keep checking to make sure she still lived. Ash picked her way carefully through the snow. The mare understood. Steady, careful, one step at a time. Ethan talked. It was rare for him. Most days he could go from sunrise to sunset without saying a word. But he needed to keep the baby awake. Needed to keep her fighting. There's a doctor in Frost Ridge, he said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Doc Bennett. He served in the war, saw everything a man can see. He'll know what to do. The baby's eyes were half closed. Her breathing had gone shallow. No, Ethan said sharply. No, you don't quit on me. You hear? We're almost there. She didn't respond. He jostled her gently, trying to keep her conscious. You got a name, little one, his voice cracked. Your mama, she looks like she's got some fight in her. Bet you do too. Bet you're just as stubborn. The woman stirred against his arm. A moan escaped her cracked lips. She was trying to wake up, trying to fight her way back. That's right, Ethan said. You wake up. You tell me your name. Tell me what happened. She didn't wake, but she whispered something, barely audible. It sounded like a name. Emma. Ethan looked down at the baby. Emma. That's your name, little one, Emma? The child's eyes opened at the sound, just for a second, just long enough to look at him with a clarity that made his breath catch. Then her eyes closed again. Ethan kicked Ash harder, faster, as fast as the mare could manage through the deep snow. Frost Ridge appeared through the storm like a miracle. Not much of a town, one main street, maybe 20 buildings all gray and weathered by harsh winters. But it had lights, it had people, it had civilization. A sign swung in the wind, creaking on its chains. H.S. Bennett, M.D. Ethan rode straight down the main street. The few people brave enough to be outside stopped and stared. He must have made quite a sight. A snow-covered cowboy with an unconscious woman draped over his saddle and a baby bundled against his chest. Doc Bennett, he called out. His voice was hoarse from the cold. Doc Bennett, I need help. The door opened before he'd even dismounted. The man who emerged was in his 60s, gray-haired and stocky. He had the calm competence of someone who'd seen the worst humanity could offer and learned how to patch it back together. One look at Ethan's burden and he moved. Bring them inside, he said. No questions, no hesitation. Now. They worked together, getting the woman down and carrying her into the warm office. She weighed nothing in their arms. Nothing at all. What happened? Doc Bennett was already examining her, checking pulse, breathing, lifting her eyelids to check her pupils. Found them in the snow about 5 miles out, Ethan said. He still held the baby, couldn't seem to let go. Been out there a while, she's hypothermic. The baby's starving. Nettie, the doc called toward the back of the building. I need you. A woman appeared, 50-something, rail-thin with sharp eyes and the kind of face that said she didn't suffer fools. She took in the scene without missing a beat. The baby needs milk, Ethan said. She's been crying for hours, maybe longer. Give her here. The woman reached for the child. Ethan's arms tightened involuntarily. The baby's hand was still wrapped around his thumb, her tiny fingers holding on like he was the only solid thing in her world. Mr. Gray, Nettie said gently. Doc Bennett must have told her his name. I'll take care of her, I promise. Something in her face made him believe her. Slowly, carefully, he transferred the baby into her arms. The infant's fingers released his thumb. Ethan felt the loss like a physical ache. What's her name? Nettie asked. Emma, I think, Ethan said, swallowing hard. Her mama said it before she went under again. Nettie nodded and disappeared into the back room, murmuring soft words to the child. Ethan turned to find Doc Bennett working over the woman with grim efficiency. He'd stripped away her frozen dress, covering her with warm blankets. Now he was checking her injuries with hands that were gentle despite their size. Someone did this to her, Bennett said quietly. He indicated the bruise on her jaw, these marks on her wrists, and her feet. He shook his head. She walked through a blizzard with no shoes. That's not confusion or accident. That's desperation. Oh, she was running, Ethan said flatly, his jaw tightened, running from whoever did that to her. And she nearly died doing it. Bennett pulled the blankets higher. Severe dehydration, hypothermia stage 3, possible infection. Her feet are badly frostbitten. She might lose some toes. He paused, meeting Ethan's eyes. But she's alive, thanks to you. Will she make it? Bennett was quiet for a moment. I don't know, son, but I'll do everything I can. From the back room came a different sound. Not crying, drinking, the hungry, desperate gulping of a child finally being fed. The baby's feeding, Nettie called out. Poor little mite's starving, but she's taking the milk well. She'll be all right. Ethan's knees nearly buckled with relief. He moved to a chair against the wall and sat heavily. You planning to stay involved in this? Bennett asked, studying him. It was a fair question. Ethan had been heading through Frost Ridge, not to it. He had no ties here. No reason to stay. His plan had been to collect his wages from the cattle company agent and move on to Montana. Keep drifting. Keep running. That was before. I'll stay until she wakes up, Ethan heard himself say. Make sure they're all right. Bennett's weathered face creased into something almost like a smile. That's good of you. Was it Ethan didn't feel good? He felt tired and cold and oddly shaken, like the foundations of his life had just shifted and he was still trying to find his footing. He'd spent 17 years avoiding exactly this kind of entanglement. 17 years running from responsibility, from connection, from anything that might anchor him in place. After the first Sarah died, the one he'd planned to marry back in '57, he'd sworn off all of it. No home, no family, no ties. And now, because of a baby's cry in a blizzard, all that careful distance was crumbling. He didn't know these people. Didn't know their names or their story or their troubles. Didn't know what kind of man left a woman and child to die in the snow, or what it would cost to stand between them and whatever was coming. He didn't know any of it, but when he looked down at that little girl Emma, when her tiny hand had gripped his thumb and her blue eyes had focused on his face, something had changed. Something he couldn't name and couldn't ignore. The night stretched long and quiet. Nettie brought the baby out eventually, clean now, fed, wrapped in a soft wool blanket that swallowed her whole. She was sleeping peacefully, her tiny face relaxed in a way that made Ethan's chest ache. She's a beautiful child, Nettie said softly. Someone loved her. You can tell by her clothes, quality work, careful stitching. Someone loved her enough to run through a blizzard with her, Ethan said. His voice came out rough. That takes more than love. That takes desperation. Nettie laid the baby in a small basket lined with cloth. You were heading somewhere, Mr. Gray, before you found them. Montana, maybe? It was. And now, Ethan looked at the basket, at Emma's sleeping face, at the door behind which Doc Bennett was fighting to save a woman whose name he didn't even know. Now, I reckon Montana can wait. Nettie studied him with those sharp eyes. You don't know what you're getting into. A woman running from someone. A man violent enough to do what was done to her. That's trouble. Real trouble. I know. And you're staying anyway. Yes, ma'am. She was quiet for a moment. Then her expression softened slightly. There's a boarding house 2 doors down. I run it. Clean rooms, fair prices. You look like you could use a bed and a hot meal. I appreciate that. Don't thank me yet, Nettie said, moving toward the door. Trouble has a way of finding people who help strangers in trouble. You might come to regret stopping in that snow. I might, Ethan said. His eyes stayed on the sleeping baby. But I would have regretted riding past a hell of a lot more. Nettie paused at the door. For a second, something soft crossed her hard face. My brother will take good care of them, she said. He's the best doctor this side of the Rockies, even if he'd never say so himself. She turned back. But Mr. Gray, when that woman wakes up, and I believe she will, there's going to be a story. A bad one, most likely. You should prepare yourself for that. I've heard bad stories before. Not like this one. Nettie's voice was quiet. A woman doesn't walk barefoot through a blizzard unless what's behind her is worse than death. Whatever she's running from, it ain't over. It's just beginning. She left. Ethan sat alone in the lamplight, the baby sleeping in her basket, the woman fighting for her life in the other room. Outside, the blizzard still raged, but in here there was warmth, quiet. the smell of wood smoke and medicine. He should leave. Every instinct he'd honed over 17 years was screaming at him to go. Collect his horse. Ride out before the snow trapped him here. Before this became his problem. But then Emma made a small sound in her sleep. A soft coo of contentment. Her tiny hand curled and uncurled against the blanket, searching for something to hold. Ethan reached into the basket and offered his thumb. Her fingers wrapped around it immediately. Even in sleep, she held on tight. "What have you done to me, little one?" he whispered. She didn't answer, just held on. And Ethan Gray, the man who never stayed, who never let himself care, who'd built his whole life around leaving, sat there in the lamplight and held a baby's hand and felt everything he'd believed about himself begin to crack. She woke with the dawn. Ethan had dozed in the chair, half sleeping, jerking awake at every sound. But he was fully alert when he heard the low moan from the PA room, followed by Doc Bennett's calm voice. "Easy now. You're safe. You are in Frost Ridge in my medical office. You're safe." Ethan stood, his legs stiff from sitting. He moved toward the door and stopped at the threshold, not wanting to crowd a woman who'd clearly been through hell. Inside, she was sitting up. Barely. Her dark hair was matted and tangled, her face still pale, but her eyes were open. Brown eyes, he noticed, warm and deep and full of fear. "My baby." Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Where's my baby?" "Right here," Ethan spoke before he could stop himself. "She's right here, safe." Those brown eyes found him. For a long moment, she just stared at this stranger standing in the doorway, claiming to know where her child was. "Emma," she breathed. "Her name is Emma. Is she?" "She's sleeping in the front room, fed, warm, healthy." Ethan stepped aside so she could see past him to where the basket sat. "Your little girl's a fighter. Takes after her mama, I reckon." The woman's face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Tears she clearly didn't have the strength to stop. "You found us," she said. Each word seemed to cost her. "You're the one who found us." "Yes, ma'am. We were dying. I felt myself dying and I couldn't." Her voice broke completely. I prayed someone would find Emma, even if I didn't make it. I prayed someone kind would find her." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He'd never been anyone's answer to a prayer before. Never been anyone's anything, really. "What's your name?" he asked instead. "So I know what to call you." She hesitated. Fear flickered in her eyes. Not of him, he realized, but of the answer itself, of what the name might reveal. "Sarah," she said finally. "Sarah Crawford." "Ethan Gray, ma'am." He touched the brim of his hat. "And I'm glad I was riding through when I was." Sarah's gaze went past him to the basket again. "Can I see her?" "Please." Ethan looked at Doc Bennett, who nodded. "Let me help you. You're not strong enough to walk yet." Together they supported Sarah to the front room. She was shaking with the effort, or maybe with emotion, but she kept moving until she reached the basket and looked down at her sleeping daughter. "Emma." She reached out with trembling fingers and touched the baby's cheek. "My Emma." The baby stirred at her mother's touch, her eyes opened, and when she saw Sarah's face, she smiled. A pure, innocent smile that held no memory of cold or hunger or fear. Sarah broke down completely. She sobbed ugly, racking sobs that shook her whole body. Ethan had to look away. Watching felt like intruding on something sacred. The reunion of a mother and child who'd nearly lost each other to the cold, and to whatever monster had driven them into it. "Thank you," Sarah managed between sobs. "Thank you, Mr. Gray. I don't know how to ever repay you." "You don't owe me anything, ma'am," Ethan said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "Just focus on getting stronger. Focus on that little girl." She looked up at him then, really looked, and something passed between them. Gratitude, yes, but something more. Recognition, maybe. Two broken people seeing each other for the first time. "You saved us," she said quietly. "I don't know why you stopped. Others didn't, but you did." Ethan felt cold all over. Others, Sarah's face changed. The gratitude was still there, but now it was shadowed by something darker. Fear, memory, shame. "There were riders," she whispered, "the day before you found us. Two men. They saw us in the snow. I tried to call out, but my voice was gone. They looked right at us." Her voice went flat. And they kept riding. Ethan's hands curled into fists. They left you to die. Yes. She looked down at Emma again. When she spoke, her words were so quiet Ethan had to strain to hear them. My husband sent them. William sent them to find me, and when they did, they rode away and left his wife and daughter to freeze. The room went silent. Ethan felt something shift in him, a cold, hard anger that settled into his bones like it belonged there. Your husband, he repeated. William Crawford. Sarah's voice shook. He'll come for us, Mr. Gray. He always comes, and when he does, then I'll be here. The words came out before Ethan could think. But once they were spoken, he knew he meant them. Every syllable. Sarah stared at him. You don't understand. William is powerful, connected. He has money, lawyers, men who do what he says. You can't fight him. I don't care what he has. Ethan stepped closer. His voice dropped low. A man who sends riders to watch his wife and child die in the snow. That man don't deserve what he has. And he sure as hell don't deserve you. Mr. Gray. Ethan, she swallowed. Ethan, you've done enough, more than enough. But this isn't your fight. Ethan looked at her. This broken, brave woman who'd walked through a blizzard to save her daughter. He looked at Emma, now awake and reaching for her mother. He thought about the choice he'd made when he heard that cry in the wind. Some choices once made couldn't be unmade. Maybe not, he said slowly, but I'm making it mine anyway. Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears, but these were different. These held something that looked almost like hope. Why, cow? She whispered. Why would you do that for strangers? Ethan didn't have a good answer. He'd asked himself the same question all night. All he knew was that when Emma had gripped his thumb, when Sarah had prayed for someone kind, something had answered. Something inside him that he'd thought was dead. Because I was there, he said finally. Because I heard your daughter crying, and because a man don't ride past that. Not if he's any kind of man at all. Outside, the blizzard had finally stopped. Pale winter sunlight streamed through the windows, making the snow sparkle like scattered diamonds. A new day was dawning in Frost Ridge. And Ethan Gray, for the first time in 17 years, had a reason to stay. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of healing and waiting. Sarah grew stronger slowly. Doc Bennett kept her confined to bed, forcing broth and water into her, changing the bandages on her ruined feet. She'd lost 2 toes to the frostbite, the smallest ones on her left foot. But she'd kept the rest. A miracle, Bennett called it. Sarah called it luck she didn't deserve. Ethan came every morning and every evening. He told himself it was just to check on them, to make sure they were safe. But the truth was simpler and harder to admit. He couldn't stay away. Emma had claimed him somehow. The little girl's face would light up whenever he appeared, her arms reaching for him, her babbling taking on an excited pitch that made Nettie smile and shake her head. At 18 months old, she was just learning to walk, taking wobbly steps across the floor before falling into Ethan's waiting arms. She knows you, Sarah said one evening, watching Ethan bounce Emma on his knee. She's never taken to anyone like this, not even her own father. Not even who? Ethan asked quietly, though he already knew. William. Sarah's voice went flat. She screamed every time he held her, like she knew, like she could sense what he was. Ethan's jaw tightened. Tell me about him. You don't want to know. I do. He met her eyes. I need to understand what we're dealing with. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Emma had fallen asleep against Ethan's chest, her tiny hand curled in his shirt. Something about that image seemed to break something loose in her mother. I was 19 when I married him, she began. Her voice was soft, distant, like she was watching the story unfold from far away. My father was a merchant in Boston. Good family, good name, but not wealthy. William Crawford was everything my father wanted for me. Rich, established, respectable. Was he good to you at first? For a month. Sarah's laugh was bitter. Maybe less. Then I learned what respectable meant to William. It meant I was his property, his possession, something to be displayed and controlled and disciplined when I stepped out of line. He hit you. He did more than hit me. Her voice dropped. He broke me, Ethan, piece by piece, year by year. He broke me until I didn't recognize myself anymore, until I thought maybe I deserved it. Maybe I was as worthless as he said. Ethan's hands had gone still on Emma's back. You're not worthless. I know that now. It took me 7 years to remember it. But I know. Sarah's eyes met his. Emma taught me. The moment I held her, I knew I couldn't let her grow up watching what he did to me. I couldn't let her learn that love looked like bruises and fear. So you ran. I tried 3 times before this. She held up 3 fingers. The first time he found me in a day, dragged me back by my hair in front of the servants. The punishment lasted a week. Ethan felt sick. The second time I got further, made it to New York, thought I was free. Sarah shook her head. He has connections everywhere. Money buys loyalty, and William has plenty of money. They brought me back and he made sure I understood what happened to wives who embarrassed their husbands. And the third time, Amma was 3 months old. William had business out west, railroad investments in Dakota Territory. I saw my chance. Her voice quickened. A woman in Deadwood helped me. Mrs. Chen, she gave me supplies, arranged for me to join a wagon train heading to Montana. But you didn't make it. No. Sarah's face darkened. 3 days out, William found us. Rode into camp, all smiles and explanations. Told everyone I was his poor, confused wife, suffering from hysteria after childbirth. Said he was taking me home for my own good. And they believed him. Why wouldn't they? He's respectable, well-dressed, well-spoken. Her voice turned bitter. I was just a hysterical woman with a newborn. The wagon master wouldn't go against him, no one would. Ethan's grip on Emma tightened unconsciously. How'd you get away this time? He took us back toward Deadwood, but he was so angry, Ethan, drunk on his own righteousness. We stopped to camp that first night and he drank himself unconscious. She paused. I waited until he was out, took Emma, and I ran into the blizzard. I didn't know it would hit so fast. I just knew I had to get away before he woke up. Had to give Emma a chance. Tears were streaming down her face now. I walked all night, all the next day. No food, no water, no shoes. I lost them in the mud when I was running. I just kept walking until I couldn't anymore, until my body gave out. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Those riders, the ones who saw you and kept going, William sent them to track you. When they found me dying, they must have decided the cold would finish what he started. Her voice broke. They left us to die. Left a baby to freeze to death. I'm going to find them. The words came out cold and hard. No. Sarah reached out and gripped his arm. No, Ethan, that's not who you are. I won't let William turn you into something violent. I'm already something violent. He met her eyes. You think a man survives 17 years on the frontier without blood on his hands? I've killed before Sarah. Killed men who deserved it. Those riders deserve it too. Maybe they do, but I didn't pray for a killer to find my daughter. I prayed for someone kind. Her grip tightened. You're kind, Ethan Gray. Don't let my husband take that from you. Something shifted in Ethan's chest, that feeling again. The one he couldn't name. The one that had started when Emma gripped his thumb and wouldn't let go. He's coming, he said quietly. William, he's going to come looking. Yes. And when he does, Sarah's chin lifted, then I'll face him. I'm done running. You won't face him alone. Ethan leaned forward, careful not to wake Emma. I don't know what this is. I don't know why I can't walk away from you and this little girl, but I can't, and I won't let him take you back to that life. You don't owe us anything. This ain't about owing, Ethan's voice dropped. This is about choosing, and I'm choosing to stay. Sarah stared at him. Her eyes were still wet with tears, but something new flickered in their depths, something that looked almost like hope. Why? She whispered. Why would you do that for strangers? Ethan looked down at Emma sleeping peacefully against his chest. He thought about 17 years of drifting, of running, of never letting himself care about anyone or anything. Because you're not strangers anymore, he said simply. Not to me. The next morning, everything changed. Ethan was at the livery stable negotiating work with the owner, a weathered black man named Samuel Ford. They were discussing wages when Sheriff Robert Grant appeared in the doorway. The lawman's face was grim. You, Ethan Gray? Ethan straightened slowly. Depends on who's asking. Sheriff of Frost Ridge. Grant stepped inside. He was in his 50s with the bearing of a man who'd spent years enforcing the law in hard places. Got a visitor in town, fancy carriage, expensive suit, asking questions about a woman and a baby. Ethan's blood went cold. Where is he? Wow. Hotel across from the courthouse. But Gray? The sheriff held up a hand. He's got paperwork, marriage certificate, birth certificate. Says the woman you brought in is his wife and the baby is his daughter. That woman walked through a blizzard to get away from him. I figured as much. Grant's eyes were sharp. I've been a lawman long enough to know the difference between a worried husband and a dangerous one. This man's dangerous. So what do we do? Legally, not much. A man's got a right to his wife and child. That's the law. The sheriff paused. But the law and justice ain't always the same thing, and I tend to lean toward justice. Ethan felt a spark of hope. You'll help us. I'll do what I can, but you need to understand something, Gray. Men like this rich connected used to getting what they want. They don't fight fair. He'll use the law like a weapon. He'll paint Mrs. Crawford as crazy or unfit. He'll make himself the victim. Then we need a plan. You need more than a plan. Grant moved closer, lowering his voice. You need to give her legal standing. Right now, she's his wife running from her lawful husband. But if she was someone else's wife, the implication hit Ethan like a punch. You're suggesting I marry her. I'm suggesting you consider all options. The sheriff shrugged. A new marriage properly witnessed and recorded would complicate his claim considerably. Wouldn't make it disappear. But it would buy time. Time for her to establish residency, gather evidence, build a case. She barely knows me. She knows you saved her life. She knows you've been at her bedside every day. She knows her daughter lights up when she sees you. Grant's eyes softened slightly. Sometimes that's enough to build something real. Ethan's mind was racing. Marriage. He'd thought about it once years ago with the first Sarah who died of fever before they could exchange vows. After that, he'd sworn off the idea entirely. No ties, no commitments, no one to lose. But now, I need to talk to her, he said. This has to be her choice. Make it fast. Grant headed for the door. Our friend at the hotel is asking questions all over town. It won't be long before he finds out where she's staying. Ethan ran. He burst into Doc Bennett's office to find Sarah already dressed sitting in a chair with Emma in her lap. Her face was pale. He knew immediately that she'd already heard. He's here, she said flatly. William is here. I know. Ethan crossed to her, dropping to one knee so they were at eye level. Sarah, listen to me. There's a way to fight this, but it's going to sound crazy. Nothing sounds crazy anymore. Marry me. Sarah went absolutely still. Not for love, Ethan said quickly. Not because I expect anything from you. But if you're my wife, legally married, properly documented, William can't just take you. He'd have to fight it in court. It would buy us time. Ethan, I know it's insane. I know we've only known each other 2 weeks. But I'm offering you protection, Sarah. Real protection, a name he can't take from you. Her eyes searched his face. You do that, bind yourself to a woman you barely know, with a dangerous husband who'll try to destroy you. I'd do it, Ethan said quietly, because I can't watch him take you back. I can't watch Emma go back to that house with that man. And because somewhere in the last 2 weeks, you stopped being strangers. His voice roughened. I don't know what this is, Sarah. I don't know what it means. But I know I can't walk away. Not from you. Not from her. Emma chose that moment to reach for Ethan. Her tiny hands grabbed at his shirt. He lifted her, automatically settling her against his chest. She nestled there like she belonged. Sarah watched them, tears streaming down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. She stood swaying slightly. Not because I have no choice. I do. I could run again. I could keep running forever. But I'm tired, Ethan. I'm so tired of being afraid. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I know. She reached out and touched his face the first time she'd touched him voluntarily. Because you're here. Because you stopped when everyone else rode past. The door crashed open. William Crawford filled the doorway. He was exactly as Sarah had described. Tall, well-groomed, expensive suit despite the frontier setting. But his face wasn't the face of a respectable businessman. It was twisted with rage, veins standing out on his forehead, eyes wild with fury. "Sarah," his voice was ice. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" Ethan moved immediately, putting himself between William and Sarah. Emma still in his arms. "You need to leave." "And who the hell are you?" William's eyes swept over Ethan with contempt. "The latest fool my wife has seduced into helping her. I'm the man who found your wife and daughter dying in the snow." Ethan's voice was deadly calm. "The snow you left them in." William's mask flickered just for a second, then it was back. "I don't know what lies Sarah has told you, but she's not well. Hasn't been since the baby was born. Hysteria, delusions. The doctors in Boston could explain it better than I can. The only thing needing explanation is why a man abandons his family in a blizzard." "I didn't." William stepped forward. "I've been searching for her for weeks, worried sick. And now I find her here with some cowboy spreading lies about me." "They ain't lies." Sarah's voice came from behind Ethan, stronger than he'd ever heard it. "Every word is true, William. Every bruise, every broken bone. Every time you made me feel like I was worthless." "Sarah, darling, you're confused." "My name is Sarah." She stepped around Ethan to face her husband directly. "You don't get to call me darling anymore. You don't get to rewrite what happened. I know what you did. And now everyone else will too." William's face went purple. "You ungrateful bitch." He lunged forward. Ethan's fist connected with his jaw before he'd taken 2 steps. William went down hard, crashing into Doc Bennett's instrument table. Medical equipment scattered across the floor. "You touch her," Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous, "and I'll kill you right here, right now, and I won't lose a second of sleep over it." William scrambled to his feet, blood dripping from a split lip. His eyes had gone cold now, calculating. The rage was still there, but it was controlled. "You'll regret that," he said quietly. "Both of you. I have lawyers, I have connections, I have the law on my side." "The law says a man can't beat his wife," Sheriff Grant said from the doorway. He'd arrived during the confrontation, one hand resting on his gun. "The law says a man can't abandon his family to die. You want to talk about law, Mr. Crawford? Let's talk about law. This is a family matter. It's assault." Grant nodded at Ethan's bloody knuckles, then at William's split lip. "You came into this office and attempted to attack a woman under medical care. I could arrest you right now. I didn't do anything. I saw what I saw." The sheriff's voice was flat. "Now you can leave Frost Ridge quietly and let the courts sort this out. Or you can keep making threats and spend the night in my jail. Your choice." William looked from Grant to Ethan to Sarah. His jaw worked, silently processing the fact that for the first time in his life, money and status weren't going to make this problem disappear. "This isn't over," he said finally. "I'll return with proper documentation. Lawyers, a court order if necessary. And when I do, Sheriff, you'll have no choice but to hand them over." "Maybe," Grant said, "but that's not today. Today you leave." William straightened his coat with deliberate calm. When he looked at Sarah, his smile was the coldest thing Ethan had ever seen. "I never lose Sarah," he said softly. "Never. You know that. Whatever you found here, whatever protection you think this cowboy can offer, it won't be enough. I'll take back what's mine, and when I do, you'll pay for every moment of defiance." He left. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Sarah's legs gave out. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor, Emma still secure in his other arm. "It's all right," he murmured. "He's gone. He's gone. He'll be back." Sarah was shaking violently. "He'll come back with lawyers and court orders, and everything will be worse. And we'll be ready." Ethan helped her to a chair, then knelt in front of her, Emma between them. "Listen to me, Sarah. That man just made a mistake. He showed his hand too early. Now we know what he's planning to do. Does it matter? He has everything. Money, power, the law. He doesn't have you." Ethan caught her face in his free hand, forcing her to meet his eyes. "He doesn't have Emma. And he doesn't have this town. This town doesn't even know me." "They will." Doc Bennett spoke for the first time. He'd been watching silently from the corner. "They'll know the woman who walked through a blizzard to save her daughter. They'll know the mother who refused to give up. and they'll know the kind of man who left them to die. Doc's right, Grant added. Frostridge isn't Boston, Mrs. Crawford. Out here, people make their own judgments, and I've already made mine. Sarah looked around the room, at the sheriff who'd taken her side, at the doctor who'd saved her life, at the cowboy who'd promised to protect her. You really think we can win, she whispered. I think we can fight, Ethan said. And sometimes that's the same thing. Emma grabbed his thumb again. That same grip, that same surprising strength, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest. Certainty, purpose. Whatever was coming, they'd face it together. The wedding happened 3 days later. Judge Marcus Whitfield, the circuit judge passing through Frost Ridge, agreed to perform the ceremony after hearing an abbreviated version of events. He was an old man with kind eyes and a healthy skepticism of wealthy men who treated their wives like property. This legal, he asked Grant privately, legal enough to make trouble for anyone who wants to challenge it. Good enough for me. The ceremony was simple. Nettie served as witness. Doc Bennett gave Sarah away a symbolic gesture that made her cry. Samuel Ford came from the livery to watch along with a handful of townspeople who'd heard whispers of the story. Sarah wore a borrowed dress, blue, simple, beautiful. Her hair was pinned up, and the bruises had faded enough that she looked almost like the woman she might have been before William broke her. Ethan wore his cleanest shirt and couldn't stop staring at her. Do you, Ethan Cole Gray, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Sarah Elizabeth Crawford, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? A pause. The weight of the question hung in the air. Not just a legal formality, but a choice, a declaration of independence. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan kissed her gently, briefly aware of everything she'd been through. But when he pulled back, Sarah was smiling. The first real smile he'd seen from her. Mrs. Gray, he said quietly, got a nice ring to it. Mr. Gray, she touched his face. Thank you for everything. Emma, held by Nettie, chose that moment to demand attention. Ethan took her, settling her against his chest. The three of them stood together for the first time as a family. Legal, documented, real. Whatever William Crawford threw at them, now they'd face it as husband and wife. The celebration was modest but warm. Nettie had arranged a small reception at her boarding house. Cake and coffee. Nothing elaborate. But the people who came seemed genuine in their congratulations. For a few hours, the shadow of William Crawford retreated. That night in the room Nettie had prepared for them, Ethan and Sarah faced the reality of their situation. I can sleep in the chair, Ethan offered immediately, or on the floor, whatever makes you comfortable. Ethan, Sarah caught his hand, I know this marriage is unconventional, but I want you to know something. What's that? I'm grateful, more grateful than I can say, but I don't want you to think I'm just using you for protection. She squeezed his hand. When I said yes, when I stood up there and took those vows, I meant them. Sarah, I don't love you, she said quickly. Not yet. I don't know if I can ever love anyone again. William destroyed something in me, and I don't know if it can be fixed. I'm not asking for love. I know, but you deserve it. Her eyes were bright with tears. You deserve a wife who can give you everything a wife should, not a broken woman with a child and a dangerous past. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You want to know what I deserve? He asked softly. I deserve to make my own choices. And I chose you, Sarah. I chose Emma. Not because you're perfect or because this is easy, but because when I heard your daughter crying in that storm, something woke up in me that I thought was dead. What do you mean? I've been drifting for 17 years. No home, no family, no purpose. Just moving from one place to another, trying not to feel anything. His voice roughened. Then I found you, and suddenly all that drifting made sense, like I was supposed to end up here. Supposed to find you. Sarah's tears spilled over. Ethan, we don't have to figure everything out tonight. We don't have to be anything more than partners right now. But I want you to know I'm not going anywhere, not ever. Whatever comes, we face it together. She rose up on her toes and kissed him. Not like the ceremony. This was real. Soft and tentative and full of unspoken promises. When she pulled back, she was still crying, but she was smiling too. Together, she whispered. Emma slept in her cradle between them that night. Sarah and Ethan lay on opposite sides of the bed, maintaining careful distance. But somewhere in the darkness, their hands found each other. They fell asleep holding on. Morning brought trouble. Ethan was just finishing breakfast when Samuel Ford appeared at the boarding house, his weathered face grim. "Riders coming in from the east," Samuel said quietly. "3 of them. Well armed." Ethan's blood went cold. "William, don't think so, but they're asking questions about the woman. About you. Where's Sarah?" "Doc's office. Nettie took her and the baby there when she saw them coming." "Smart woman." Ethan grabbed his rifle and headed for the door. The 3 riders were waiting on Main Street when he emerged. Hard men with harder eyes. The kind Ethan recognized from his years on the frontier. Hired guns. Men who did dirty work for dirty money. Ethan Gray, the lead rider called. He was tall and lean with a scar running down his left cheek. "Name's Rollins. My employer wants a word with you." "Your employer can go to hell." Rollins smiled without warmth. "That's not very friendly, Mr. Gray, especially considering our employer just wants to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" "The generous kind." Rollins leaned forward in his saddle. "Walk away. Leave town tonight. $500 waiting for you in Cheyenne. Nobody gets hurt." "And if I don't," the smile vanished, "then things get considerably less friendly." Ethan felt the weight of his rifle in his hands. He was fast. Fast enough. But 3 against 1 in the open street, those weren't good odds. "You tell your employer," Ethan said slowly, "that my wife and daughter aren't for sale, and neither am I." "Your wife," Rollins laughed. "That's rich. She's William Crawford's wife. Has been for 7 years. That little ceremony you had doesn't change facts. Facts change all the time out here. And the fact right now is that you're outnumbered." Rollins' eyes flicked, but over Ethan's shoulder. Ethan didn't turn, but he heard the footsteps. Sheriff Grant, Samuel Ford, Doc Bennett, more townspeople who'd been watching from doorways and windows now emerging with weapons in hand. "Frost Ridge takes care of its own," Grant said calmly, "and Mrs. Gray is one of ours now." Rollins assessed the situation with a professional's eye. Whatever conclusion he reached, it wasn't in his favor. "This ain't over," he said quietly. "Not by a long shot." "Maybe not," Ethan replied, "but it's over for today. Ride out." For a long moment, nobody moved. The tension stretched tight enough to snap. Then Rollins wheeled his horse around, and the 3 riders disappeared down the road. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Thank you," he said to the crowd, "all of you." "Don't thank us yet," Grant said grimly. "That was just the first wave. Crawford's testing our defenses, seeing what we're made of. What comes next?" "Next, he brings the law." 2 weeks passed in tense silence. Ethan kept watching the horizon, waiting for the storm he knew was coming. Sarah threw herself into recovery, walking more each day despite the pain in her damaged feet, forcing herself to grow stronger. Emma grew and laughed and remained blissfully unaware of the danger circling her family. The summons arrived on a gray December morning. A territorial marshal rode into Frost Ridge with official documents bearing the seal of the Dakota Territorial Court. Ethan and Sarah were ordered to appear before Judge Augustus Crane in Rapid City in 3 weeks' time. William Crawford was contesting their marriage, claiming Sarah as his legal wife and demanding custody of Emma. "This is bad," Sheriff Grant said, scanning the papers in Doc Bennett's office. "Crane is old school, traditional, believes in the sanctity of original marriage vows." "Meaning he'll side with William," Ethan said flatly. "Meaning he'll lean that way." "Yes." Grant handed the summons back. Whitfield's ceremony was legal, but Crane might not see it that way. He might rule that Sarah's first marriage takes precedence. Sarah had gone pale. Emma squirmed in her arms, sensing her mother's distress. "So that's it," her voice shook. "William wins, he just takes us back." "Not necessarily." A new voice came from the doorway. A young man stepped inside, early 30s, sharp eyes, intensity radiating from every pore. "Daniel Warren, I practice law in Deadwood. Sheriff Grant sent word about your situation." Ethan sized him up. "You think you can help?" "I think I can fight." Warren moved into the room, at his gaze settling on Sarah. "Mrs. Gray, I've heard some of your story. I'd like to hear the rest." "Why?" Sarah asked wearily. "Why would you take this case?" Because I've spent my career watching powerful men use the law as a weapon against people who can't fight back. Warren's jaw tightened. I'm tired of watching them win. Over the next hour, Sarah told her story again. The beatings, the broken bones, the escape attempts, the abandonment in the blizzard. Warren listened without interruption, taking notes in a leather journal, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Gray, he said finally, I won't lie to you, this case is difficult. William Crawford has money connections and legal precedent on his side, but he also has a weakness. What weakness? You. Warren leaned forward. If you're willing to testify to stand in that courtroom and tell Judge Crane exactly what William did to you, we have a chance. Abuse is grounds for annulment in some jurisdictions. It's our best argument. Sarah's face went white. Testify? You mean stand up there and talk about everything with William sitting right there watching me? I know it's asking a lot. You don't know anything. Her voice cracked. You're asking me to relive every horror, every humiliation, with William sitting right there. You're asking me to expose my deepest wounds to strangers. I'm asking you to fight for your daughter. Warren's voice was gentle but firm. Without your testimony, our case is significantly weaker. We'd be relying on medical evidence and witness statements. That might not be enough. Ethan reached for Sarah's hand. You don't have to decide now. Yes, she does. Warren stood. We have 3 weeks to prepare. That's not much time to build a case against a man like William Crawford. I need to know today whether you're willing to testify. Sarah looked at Emma, at her daughter's innocent face, her trusting eyes. She thought about what would happen if they lost. Emma growing up in that house, watching her mother be beaten, learning that love meant fear. I'll do it, she whispered. God help me, I'll do it. The 3 weeks before the trial were a blur of preparation. Warren drilled Sarah, relentlessly teaching her how to answer questions clearly, how to resist emotional manipulation, how to maintain composure under attack. Doc Bennett compiled his medical records into a devastating file documenting the evidence of abuse. Nettie and Samuel and a dozen other townspeople prepared statements attesting to Sarah's character and condition when she'd arrived. But despite all the preparation, the tension mounted. Sarah's nightmares returned with a vengeance. She'd wake screaming, drenched in sweat. Ethan would hold her until the shaking stopped. Some nights she couldn't sleep at all. She'd pace the small room, checking on Emma every few minutes as if afraid her daughter might vanish. I can't do this, she said one night, her voice breaking. Ethan, I can't stand in that courtroom and face him. Yes, you can. You don't understand the things he did to me. She wrapped her arms around herself. I've never told anyone everything. Not even you. There are things I can't say out loud, things that would destroy me. Then don't say them. Tell the court what you can. That's enough. What if it isn't? What if they still rule in his favor? Then we run. The words came out before Ethan could stop them. We take Emma and we disappear. Change our names. Start over somewhere William can never find us. You do that? Become a fugitive. I'd do anything. He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. Anything to keep you and Emma safe. You hear me? Anything. Sarah kissed him then. Not the gentle, tentative kisses they'd shared before. This was desperate, hungry, full of fear and need and something that might have been love. When they finally broke apart, she was crying. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Let me decide what you deserve. The night before they left for Rapid City, Sarah made a decision. She found Ethan in Nettie's parlor going over Warren's notes one more time. Emma was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. I need to tell you something, she said. Ethan looked up, instantly alert. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I just need to say this. She sat beside him, taking his hands in hers. If tomorrow goes badly, if William wins, I want you to know these past few weeks have been the happiest of my life. Sarah, let me finish. Her grip tightened. I married you for protection. I told myself that's all it was. But somewhere along the way, I started wanting more. Ethan's heart was pounding. What do you mean? I mean I love you. The words came out in a rush. I didn't think I could. I thought William had killed that part of me. But you brought it back, Ethan. With your kindness, your patience, the way you look at Emma like she's your own daughter. She is my daughter. in every way that matters. I know. Tears were streaming down Sarah's face. And you're my husband in every way that matters. I wanted you to know that before tomorrow. Whatever happens in that courtroom, what we have is real. I love you too. Ethan cupped her face in his hands. Have for a while now, just didn't want to rush you by saying it. You can say it now, say it as often as you want. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, and when he pulled back, he saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Trust, complete and absolute trust. We're going to win tomorrow, he said quietly. We're going to fight, and we're going to win. And then we're going to build a life together. A real life, you, me, and Emma. Promise, promise. They held each other through the night, drawing strength from the contact. And when morning came, they rose together to face whatever waited in Rapid City. The courthouse was larger than Ethan expected. Stone columns, formal architecture, the kind of building designed to intimidate. They'd arrived the day before settling into a modest hotel while Warren made final preparations. Now standing on the steps, Ethan felt the weight of what they were about to do. You ready? He asked Sarah. No. She straightened her spine. But I'm doing it anyway. Inside, the courtroom was already filling. William Crawford sat at one table with two expensive suited lawyers looking every inch the respectable businessman. When Sarah entered, his eyes tracked her like a predator watching prey. Ethan put himself between them. Don't look at him, he murmured. Look at Warren. Look at me. Look at anyone but him. They took their seats. Emma was safely with Nettie back at the hotel, too young for courtroom drama and too important to risk. Judge Augustus Crane entered and the room rose. He was exactly as Grant had described. Stern, traditional, with the rigid bearing of a man who valued order above all else. His eyes swept the courtroom with cold assessment. Be seated. We're hearing of the matter of Crawford versus Gray. Mr. Peaton, you may present the petitioner's case. William's lead lawyer rose. He was smooth, practiced, every word calculated for maximum impact. Your Honor, this is a simple case of a husband trying to recover his wife and child from an unlawful situation. Mrs. Crawford, and I use her legal name, not the fictitious one she's adopted, has been suffering from postpartum hysteria since the birth of their daughter. In her confused state, she fled from her husband's care and fell under the influence of a frontier cowboy who saw an opportunity. Ethan's fists clenched. Warren put a warning hand on his arm. The marriage between Ethan Gray and Sarah Crawford is invalid because Sarah was already married. She is legally Mrs. William Crawford and has been for 7 years. Their daughter, Emma Crawford, is Mr. Crawford's legal heir. We ask the court to annul the fraudulent marriage and return both wife and child to their rightful home. Crane's expression was unreadable. Mr. Warren, your response. Warren stood slowly. Your Honor, the petitioner would have you believe this is a simple case of marital dispute. It is not. This is a case of systematic abuse, attempted murder, and a brave woman's desperate flight to save her child. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. William's face darkened. Over the next few days, we will present evidence that William Crawford subjected his wife to years of physical and emotional violence. We will show medical documentation of injuries consistent with sustained abuse. And we will demonstrate that Mrs. Gray's marriage to my client was entered into freely and with legitimate intent, not as fraud, but as the only means of escape from a man who had already tried to kill her. Objection. Peaton was on his feet. Those allegations are outrageous and unsubstantiated. They will be substantiated by testimony and evidence, Warren replied calmly. Objection overruled. Continue, Mr. Warren. The battle was joined. The first day was a skirmish. Peaton presented character witnesses for William, business associates who testified to his respectability, church members who praised his charity work. Each one painted a picture of an upstanding citizen wronged by his unstable wife. But Warren was ready. Mr. Harrison, he asked one of William's business partners, did you ever visit the Crawford home? On occasion, yes. Did you ever observe any tension between Mr. and Mrs. Crawford? Perhaps occasionally, but all marriages have tensions. Did you ever see Mrs. Crawford with unexplained injuries? A black eye, perhaps, a bruised jaw? Harrison shifted uncomfortably. I may have noticed some. I assumed she was clumsy. Clumsy? Warren let the word hang. How often would you say Mrs. Crawford was clumsy, Mr. Harrison, monthly, weekly? I didn't keep count. Would you say it was a regular occurrence? Objection, badgering the witness. Withdrawn, no further questions. The damage was done. Ethan saw doubt flickering on some faces in the gallery. The second day brought Doc Bennett to the stand. Dr. Bennett, you treated Mrs. Gray when she was brought to your office. Can you describe her condition? Severe hypothermia, dehydration, fever, frostbite so severe she lost 2 toes. Bennett's voice was steady. She'd walk through a blizzard with no shoes carrying an infant. It's a miracle she survived. Did you observe any other injuries? Yes, bruising on her jaw consistent with a forceful blow. Marks on her wrists consistent with being restrained. Healed fractures in 3 ribs that suggest previous injuries. In your medical opinion, were these injuries consistent with the petitioner's claim that Mrs. Gray is simply clumsy? No, Hoyle. Bennett's eyes went to William. These injuries are consistent with sustained domestic abuse. I've seen it before, unfortunately. The pattern is unmistakable. William's lawyers attacked savagely on cross-examination, questioning Bennett's credentials, suggesting the injuries could have occurred during Sarah's flight through the wilderness. But the doctor held firm. When he stepped down, the doubt in the gallery had grown. The third day was Sarah's turn. She rose on shaking legs. Ethan's hand squeezed hers one last time before she approached the witness stand. The oath was administered. She sat her back straight, her face pale but determined. Mrs. Gray, Warren began gently, please tell the court about your marriage to William Crawford. And she did. She told them about the first month of happiness, the gradual revelation of William's true nature. She described the first slap that it became a punch that became a pattern. She told them about nights locked in her room, days of walking on eggshells, the slow erosion of her identity until she barely recognized herself. The courtroom was silent. He told me I was worthless, Sarah said, her voice breaking. He told me no one would ever want me. He told me I deserved everything he did because I was a failure as a wife. Did you believe him? For a long time, yes. Tears streamed down her face. He broke me down so completely that I thought he was right. I thought I deserved the pain. What changed, Emma? Sarah's voice strengthened. When I held my daughter for the first time, I knew I couldn't let her grow up watching what he did to me. I couldn't let her learn that love looked like bruises. So you tried to leave. 3 times before this. Each time he found me. Each time the punishment was worse. She described the final escape, Dakota Territory, the railroad business, the woman in Deadwood who helped, the wagon train, William finding them playing the worried husband, the wagon master who believed him, William taking them back toward Deadwood, getting drunk, Sarah running into the blizzard without shoes. I walked all night, all the next day, no food, no water, just Emma in my arms. Her voice went cold. When my body finally gave out, I lay down in the snow and prayed. Her eyes found Ethan in the gallery. I prayed that someone kind would find my daughter, even if I didn't survive. I prayed someone kind would save her. And Mr. Gray found you. Yes. A small smile touched her lips. He heard Emma crying, and unlike others, he didn't ride past. Warren paused, letting the testimony sink in. Mrs. Gray, you mentioned others rode past. Can you explain? The day before Ethan found us, 2 riders saw us in the snow. I was conscious enough to see them. I tried to call out, but my voice was gone. Her voice hardened. They looked right at us, and they kept riding. Gasps from the gallery. Even Judge Crane's expression flickered. Do you know who those riders were? William sent them. They were tracking me. When they found me dying, they left me there. Her voice went deadly quiet. They left me and my baby to freeze to death. Objection. Peaton was on his feet. There's no evidence my client had anything to do with those riders. We'll provide that evidence, Your Honor. Warren's voice was calm. I have signed statements from 2 men currently in custody in Deadwood who confessed to being hired by William Crawford to track his wife and report on her location. The courtroom erupted. Crane's gavel hammered down. Order in this court. William had gone white. For the first time, his mask of respectability showed cracks. When did you obtain these statements? Crane demanded. Yesterday evening, Your Honor. The men were apprehended attempting to leave the territory. When faced with accessory to murder charges, they were remarkably forthcoming. Peaton was scrambling. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We need time to examine these statements. You'll have time during your cross-examination, Mr. Peaton, but these statements will be admitted as evidence. Crane's eyes went to William. Mr. Crawford, you would be way to remain silent at this juncture. The cross-examination was brutal. Peaton attacked every aspect of Sarah's testimony, questioned her memory, her motivations, her sanity. Implied she'd exaggerated the abuse, fabricated the story about the riders, seduced Ethan into a fraudulent marriage. Through it all, Sarah held firm. Mrs. Crawford, Peaton said deliberately. Gray, she corrected quietly. My name is Sarah Gray. Mrs. Crawford, isn't it true that you abandoned your husband without provocation, that you kidnapped his daughter and fled into the wilderness with no plan? My plan was to survive. My plan was to give my daughter a chance at a life without violence. You claim my client abused you, yet you stayed with him for 7 years. Why didn't you leave sooner if things were so terrible? Sarah's eyes went hard. Have you ever been trapped, Mr. Peaton? Have you ever been so beaten down, so isolated, so convinced of your own worthlessness that escape seemed impossible? I stayed because I was afraid. I stayed because William told me no one would believe me. She looked directly at the courtroom. And he was right. No one did. Until now. No further questions. Sarah stepped down, trembling but unbroken. Ethan caught her as she reached him. You did it. You did it. It's not over yet. It wasn't. The final arguments came the next morning. Peaton made an impassioned plea for the sanctity of marriage, the rights of a father to his child, the dangers of setting a precedent that allowed wives to simply walk away from their husbands. Warren's closing was quieter but no less powerful. Your Honor, we've heard a lot about legal rights and marital obligations, but this case isn't really about law. It's about justice, Boisseau. About whether a woman who has been beaten, terrorized, and nearly murdered has the right to seek safety. About whether a child deserves to grow up free from violence, he paused. William Crawford is a wealthy man, a connected man, a man who has used his power to control and abuse his wife for 7 years. When she finally found the courage to escape, he sent men to track her down. Men who left her and her infant daughter to die in a blizzard. His voice hardened. The law Mr. Peaton cites was written to protect families. But what family was William Crawford protecting when he beat his wife? What family was he protecting when he abandoned her to freeze? The marriage he claims to honor was a prison. The home he wants to take her back to is a torture chamber. Warren turned to face the judge directly. Sarah Gray came to this territory seeking freedom. She found a man who offered her protection without demanding anything in return. She found a community that rallied around her instead of turning away. She found the courage to stand in this courtroom and tell her truth, knowing William Crawford would use every weapon at his disposal to destroy her. His voice dropped. That is not a hysterical woman, Your Honor. That is a survivor, and she deserves to remain free. Judge Crane was silent for a long moment. This court will recess until tomorrow morning, at which time I will deliver my ruling. The night was the longest of Ethan's life. He and Sarah sat together in their hotel room, Emma sleeping between them, neither able to speak about what might happen. The stakes were too high, the fear too present. If we lose, Sarah said finally, I want you to take Emma. What? Take her. Run. Don't look back. Her eyes were fierce. Promise me, Ethan, if the ruling goes against us, you take our daughter and you disappear. I'm not leaving you. You have to. I can survive, William. I've survived him before, but Emma, I can't let him have her. I can't let her grow up in that house. Promise me. Ethan's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed against it. But he saw the desperation in Sarah's eyes, the mother's terror that transcended her own survival. I promise, he said quietly, but it won't come to that. We're going to win. How do you know? Because we have something William doesn't. What's that? The truth. He pulled her close. And each other. Morning came too slowly and too fast. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the dramatic testimony, and it seemed half of Rapid City had come to witness the ruling. Ethan held Sarah's hand as they took their seats, feeling her pulse racing beneath his fingers. Judge Crane entered. The room rose, then sat in tense silence. I have considered the evidence and arguments presented in this case carefully, Crane began. The legal questions are complex. The emotional stakes are high. and the consequences of my ruling will affect 3 lives profoundly." He paused, his eyes sweeping the courtroom. The petitioner argues that his marriage to Sarah Crawford is valid and binding, and that the subsequent marriage to Ethan Gray is therefore fraudulent. There is merit to this argument. The law has traditionally upheld the primacy of first marriages. Ethan felt Sarah's hand tighten convulsively. However, Crane continued, the law also recognizes circumstances under which marriages can be annulled or set aside. Chief among these is cruelty, systematic abuse that renders the marriage contract void. His gaze settled on William. "I have reviewed the medical evidence. I have heard testimony from witnesses. I have read the statements of 2 men who confessed to being paid to track Mrs. Gray and leave her to die. And I have watched Mrs. Gray herself stand in this courtroom and detail years of abuse with a courage that speaks to the truth of her account." Crane's voice hardened. "William Crawford, you have presented yourself as a wronged husband seeking the return of his family. But the evidence tells a different story. It tells of a man who used his wife as a punching bag, who broke her bones and her spirit, who, when she finally escaped, hired men to ensure she never reached safety." "Your Honor," Peaton began. "I am not finished, Mr. Peaton." Crane's tone brooked no argument. "In light of this evidence, I am ruling that the marriage between William Crawford and Sarah Crawford is null and void on grounds of extreme cruelty. Furthermore, I am recognizing the marriage between Ethan Gray and Sarah Gray as valid and legally binding." The courtroom exploded. Sarah collapsed against Ethan, sobbing. He held her tight, his own eyes burning with tears he refused to shed. Around them, the gallery erupted in cheers and shouts, chaos reigning despite Crane's gavel. "Order, I am not finished." Slowly the noise subsided. But for the matter of the child, Emma Gray, Crane emphasized the name deliberately, "I am granting full parental rights to Ethan and Sarah Gray. William Crawford's parental rights are hereby terminated." William surged to his feet. "You can't do this. She's my daughter, my blood." "Blood does not make a father, Mr. Crawford." Crane's voice was cold. "Your actions have forfeited any claim you might have had to that child. Furthermore, I am referring the matter of the 2 men who abandoned Mrs. Gray to the territorial prosecutor. Criminal charges may be forthcoming." His gavel came down with finality. "This court is adjourned." Ethan barely heard the words. He was holding Sarah, feeling her tears soak through his shirt, watching over her shoulder, as William Crawford stood frozen, his world crumbling around him. They had won, against all odds, against all power and money and legal precedent. They had won. "It's over," Sarah whispered against his chest. "Ethan, it's over." "Yes," he kissed the top of her head. "It's over." But even as he said it, Ethan saw the look in William Crawford's eyes. The cold, calculating fury that spoke of a man who had never lost. A man who didn't know how to accept defeat. The legal battle was won, but something in Ethan's gut told him the war wasn't over yet. The journey back to Frost Ridge should have felt like a victory parade. Instead, Ethan rode with one hand on his rifle and his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. The court ruling was final, legally binding, but William Crawford's face in that courtroom haunted him. That look of cold fury, that promise of retribution. Men like William didn't accept defeat. They rewrote it. "You're watching the road like you expect an ambush," Sarah said from beside him in the wagon. "Maybe I do." "Ethan," she reached for his arm. "We won. It's over. The law says it's over." "William hasn't agreed yet." Sarah fell silent. She knew he was right. 7 years of marriage had taught her exactly what William was capable of when things didn't go his way. Emma babbled happily in her mother's lap, oblivious to the tension. At least one of them could enjoy the moment. They reached Frost Ridge 3 days later, exhausted but intact. The town turned out to greet them. Word of the verdict had traveled fast, and people who'd barely known Sarah a month ago now treated her like family. "Welcome home, Mrs. Gray," Samuel Ford said, helping her down from the wagon. Home. The word hit Sarah like a physical force. She'd never had a home, not really. Not since she was a girl in Boston before William, before everything went wrong. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick. Nettie was waiting at the boarding house with hot food and warm beds. Doc Bennett stopped by to check Sarah's feet, pronouncing them healed enough for normal activity. Sheriff Grant came with news that made Ethan's blood run cold. William left Rapid City the day after the verdict. Destination unknown. He could be anywhere, Grant warned. Could have gone back east, could be circling around. I've got men watching the roads, but this is a lot of territory to cover. He'll come here, Ethan said flatly. He's not the type to walk away. Then we'll be ready. But ready for what? That was the question that kept Ethan awake through the long winter nights. An armed assault, legal maneuvering. Something subtler, more insidious. William Crawford had spent his whole life getting what he wanted. The idea that a frontier judge could simply take away his wife and child, it wouldn't compute. Somewhere in that twisted mind, he was already planning his next move. Ethan just had to figure out what it was before it was too late. 2 weeks passed. Intense normality. Sarah threw herself into building a life in Frost Ridge. She started helping Nettie at the boarding house, earning a small wage that she insisted on contributing to their household. She talked about maybe starting a school teaching the children whose parents couldn't afford to send them away for education. You'd be good at that, Ethan told her one evening, watching her read to Emma by the fire. You think so? I know so. You've got patience and you care about learning. Kids need teachers who care. Sarah smiled that real smile he loved, the one that reached her eyes. Maybe in the spring, when things have settled. If things settled. If William let them settle. Ethan kept working at Samuel's livery, building a reputation as a steady hand and a fair man. He'd started saving money, dreaming of maybe buying some land, building a proper house for his family. A future he'd never imagined wanting was now all he could think about. But the shadow of William Crawford hung over everything. You're wound tighter than a new rope, Samuel observed one afternoon, watching Ethan startle at a sudden noise. Just being careful. Being careful is smart. Being scared is something else. Samuel set down his tools and looked Ethan in the eye. That woman of yours, she's starting to believe she might actually be safe. Starting to hope. Don't take that from her by jumping at every shadow. I'm not. You are, and I understand why. But living in fear ain't living. Whatever's coming, it'll come. Whether you're watching for it or not. Might as well enjoy the peace while you have it. Samuel was right. Ethan knew it. But knowing and doing were different things. That night he made an effort. He came home early, bringing a small wooden horse he'd carved for Emma. He helped Sarah cook dinner, something he'd never done before. He told stories about his years on the trail, making her laugh with tales of stubborn cattle and stubborner cowboys. For a few hours he let himself forget. Then came the knock on the door. Ethan's hand went to his gun before he'd consciously decided to move. Sarah's face went white. Even Emma, sensing the sudden tension, fell silent. Ethan, Sarah, Nettie's voice came through the wood. There's someone here to see you. Ethan opened the door, gun still in hand. Nettie stood in the hallway, her face grim. Behind her was a man Ethan didn't recognize. Young, well-dressed, with the look of a clerk or secretary. This is Mr. Porter, Nettie said carefully. He says he's got a message from William Crawford. Ethan's grip tightened on his weapon. What kind of message? Porter cleared his throat nervously. Mr. Crawford wishes me to inform you that he accepts the court's ruling. He will not contest it further or pursue any legal remedies. Silence. Complete. Total. That's it? Sarah had come to stand beside Ethan, Emma in her arms. He's just giving up. Mr. Crawford also wishes to apologize for any distress he may have caused. Porter pulled an envelope from his coat. He asked me to deliver this, a sum of money to help you establish yourselves. $5,000. Ethan didn't reach for the envelope. Why, sir? Why would William Crawford apologize? Why would he give us money? That man doesn't do anything without expecting something in return. Porter shifted uncomfortably. I'm only the messenger, Mr. Gray. I don't presume to understand Mr. Crawford's motivations. Where is he now? I'm not at liberty to say. Not at liberty or don't know. Porter's eyes flickered just for a second, but it was enough. He's still here, Ethan said flatly. Still in the territory. This is a trick. Mr. Gray, I assure you there is no trick. Get out. Ethan stepped forward and Porter stumbled back. Go back to your employer and tell him we don't want his money. We don't want his apologies. We want him gone. Permanently. Porter fled without another word. Nettie watched him go, then turned to Ethan. You think it's a trap? I know it's a trap. I just don't know what kind yet. Sarah was trembling. Why can't he just leave us alone? He lost. The court ruled against him. Why can't he just accept it? Because men like William don't lose. Ethan pulled her close. Emma squeezed between them. They redefine the game until they win. So what do? We stay alert. We don't let our guard down. And we wait for him to make his move. They didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, Sheriff Grant rode in with news that chilled Ethan's blood. He's bought the bank, Grant said without preamble. Frost Ridge Savings and Loan. William Crawford now owns the mortgage on half the buildings in town, including this boarding house. Nettie went pale. That's impossible. The bank wasn't for sale. It is when you offer 3 times its value in cash. Grant's jaw was tight. He's also bought the general store and made an offer on the hotel. Anyone who owes money in Frost Ridge now owes it to William Crawford. He's buying the town, Ethan realized. He's going to use economic pressure to drive us out. Or drive the town against you, Grant said quietly. If he calls in loans raises, rents makes life difficult enough for people, they'll blame you. They'll turn on you to save themselves. Some might, Sarah's voice was hollow. They'll turn on us to save their own families. Some won't, Grant said. But he's changed the battlefield. This isn't about guns anymore. It's about survival. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. William had found a way around the court ruling, around the law, around everything they'd built. He couldn't take Sarah by force, so he'd take everything else until she had no choice but to come back to him. What do? He asked. I don't know, Grant admitted. I'm a lawman. I know how to handle outlaws and criminals. This using money as a weapon, I don't know how to fight this. Maybe we don't fight it. Sarah's voice was quiet. Maybe I go to him. What? Ethan grabbed her shoulders. No. If I go back, if I agree to return, he'll stop. He'll sell the properties back. The town will be safe. No, that's exactly what he wants. He's trying to force your hand, make you feel like there's no other choice. But there's always another choice. What choice? Watch this town suffer because of me. Watch Nettie lose her home. Watch people turn against us because William Crawford can starve them into submission. Sarah's tears were streaming now. I can't do that, Ethan. You walked through a blizzard to escape that man. You testified in court, told your story to strangers, faced him down when everything in you wanted to run. He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. You did all that for Emma, for the chance at a life worth living. Don't give that up now. Don't let him win by making you think you have no choice. We'll find another way. Together. How? Ethan didn't have an answer. But he'd find one. He had to. The town meeting was called for the next evening. Nearly everyone in Frost Ridge crammed into the church, the only building large enough to hold them all. Ethan stood with Sarah near the back, feeling the weight of hostile stares from some supportive nods from others. William Crawford stood at the front, flanked by lawyers and accountants. He looked every inch the respectable businessman, not a hair out of place, his voice smooth and reasonable as he addressed the crowd. I want to be clear, William said. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to invest. Frost Ridge has potential, and I see opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Someone called out. Growth, development, a proper bank that can fund expansion, a general store with better goods at fair prices. William smiled. I want to help this town prosper. And what do you want in return? Samuel Ford's voice cut through the murmurs. William's smile didn't waver. Simply to be part of the community, to contribute, to show that I'm not the monster some have painted me as. His eyes found Sarah in the crowd. My former wife and I had our differences. The court ruled in her favor, and I accept that ruling. But I hope that in time the people of Frost Ridge will judge me by my actions here, not by accusations made in a distant courtroom. It was masterful. Ethan had to admit that. William was positioning himself as the reasonable one, the generous benefactor, while subtly painting Sarah as the troubled woman who'd spread lies about him. He's good, Sarah whispered. He was always good at this, making people believe whatever he wanted them to believe. Not everyone. Enough will believe him. Ethan watched the crowd reading faces. William was right. Some people were nodding, accepting his narrative. Money talked, and William had a lot of it to spread around. But others looked skeptical. unconvinced by smooth words and expensive suits. The question was, which group would prevail? I have a question. Nettie stepped forward, her voice cutting through the buzz. You say you want to be part of this community, but you bought the mortgage on my boarding house, a business that was doing just fine without even talking to me first. That feel neighborly to you? William's smile tightened slightly. A business transaction, Mrs. Price. Nothing personal. Funny how your business transactions all seem to circle around buildings connected to your former wife. Nettie's eyes were sharp. The boarding house where she lives, the general store where she shops, the bank that holds what little savings she has. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. You say you're here to invest, Nettie continued, but it sure looks like you're here to squeeze, to make life so hard for certain people that they have no choice but to do what you want. That's absurd, William began. Was it? Doc Bennett spoke up now. I treated your wife when she arrived in Frost Ridge, Mr. Crawford. I saw the bruises, the broken bones, the frostbite from walking barefoot through a blizzard to escape you. When those injuries occurred during her confused flight. I've been a doctor for 30 years. Bennett's voice was hard. I know the difference between accident injuries and abuse injuries. And I know a man who can't accept losing when I see one. The crowd was shifting now, the skeptical faction growing as Nettie and Bennett spoke their piece. William's mask was slipping. Ethan could see the rage building behind his eyes, the same rage that had terrified Sarah for 7 years. This is ridiculous, William snapped. I come here offering investment opportunity, and I'm treated like a criminal based on the word of a hysterical woman and a drifter cowboy who saw an opportunity. Watch your mouth. Ethan stepped forward. That hysterical woman is my wife, and she's got more courage in her little finger than you've got in your whole body. Your wife? William laughed bitterly. A marriage of convenience to escape her lawful husband. Do you really think that means anything? Do you think she loves you? I know she does. She's using you, Mr. Gray, the way she uses everyone. You're a tool to her, nothing more, a means to an end. And you were a prison. Sarah's voice rang out, silencing the crowd. She stepped around Ethan to face William directly. That's what our marriage was, William. A prison. 7 years of being told I was worthless. 7 years of walking on eggshells, terrified of setting off your temper. 7 years of covering bruises and making excuses and dying inside a little more each day. Sarah. My name is Sarah. Her voice didn't waver. You don't get to call me anything else anymore. You don't get to rename me, redefine me, rewrite what happened between us. Everything I did was for your own good. You broke my ribs, William, 3 times. You choked me until I passed out. You locked me in my room for days when I displeased you. Her voice grew stronger with each word. And when I finally escaped, you sent men to watch me die in the snow. The crowd was utterly silent. You want these people to believe you're a reasonable man, a generous investor. Sarah stepped closer. You're a monster. You've always been a monster. And I spent 7 years believing your lies, believing I deserved what you did to me. But I don't believe them anymore. William's face had gone purple. The mask was completely gone now, replaced by the fury Sarah knew so well. You ungrateful bitch! His hand came up. Ethan moved, but he wasn't fast enough. Sarah caught William's wrist before the blow could land. For 7 years she had flinched, had cowered, had taken the blows. Not this time. Not this time, she said quietly. Never again. She held his wrist, didn't let go, didn't flinch, didn't look away. William crumbled. It happened slowly at first. His face went from rage to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. His hand dropped. His shoulders slumped. He took a step back, then another. You were mine, he whispered. You were supposed to be mine. I was never yours, William. I was my own person. You just couldn't see it. William looked around the room, at the hostile faces, the closed ranks of a community that had chosen sides, at the sheriff whose hand rested on his gun, at the cowboy who stood ready to protect the woman he loved. He'd lost. Not just the legal battle, not just the economic war. He'd lost the thing he wanted most, the power to make Sarah afraid. This isn't over, he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. Yes, it is. Sarah's voice was gentle now, almost pitying. Go home, William. Go back to Boston and find someone else to control. But it won't be me. It will never be me again. William stood there for a long moment, something broken in his eyes. Then without another word, he turned and walked out of the church. No one tried to stop him. The room erupted. People were shouting, crying, embracing. Nettie had her arms around Sarah. Doc Bennett was shaking Ethan's hand. Even Sheriff Grant looked moved, but Ethan only had eyes for his wife. She stood in the center of the chaos, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. He pushed through the crowd and pulled her into his arms. You did it, he murmured against her hair. You faced him down. I was terrified. I know, but you did it anyway. That's what courage is. I couldn't have done it without you, without knowing you were there, without knowing you'd catch me if I fell. Always, he promised, always. But the night wasn't over yet. They were at the 40 acres they'd purchased, starting to build their house. Emma slept in a tent nearby. Sarah and Ethan sat by the campfire exhausted, but at peace for the first time in weeks. Then came the gunshot. The bullet hit a tree next to Ethan's head, bark exploding. William emerged from the darkness, drunk, holding a rifle. His expensive suit was torn and dirty, his face twisted with rage and grief and something that might have been madness. You think this is over? His voice was slurred. You think you can just take what's mine? Ethan moved immediately, putting himself between William and Sarah. Emma still sleeping in the tent behind them. Put the gun down, William. She's mine. That child is mine. The court says different. William aimed the rifle at Ethan. I don't care what the court says. I don't care about any of it. If I can't have them, nobody will. Sarah screamed, but William was drunk. His aim was off. The shot went wide. Ethan moved. Fast. Years of frontier life had honed his reflexes to razor sharpness. He tackled William before he could fire again. They fought. Brutal. Desperate. William may have been wealthy, but he was fighting with the rage of a man who'd lost everything. He fought with fists and elbows and teeth, trying to gouge eyes, trying to bite, trying to kill. Ethan fought with cold precision and with everything to protect. The fight ended with Ethan pinning William to the ground, the rifle thrown aside, his hand on William's throat. I told you what would happen if you touched her. Ethan said, his voice low and deadly. I told you I'd kill you and not lose sleep. William's eyes were wide, terrified. Do it, he choked out. Just do it. Ethan's hand tightened. Ethan. Sarah's voice cut through the red haze. Ethan, don't. He looked up at her. I didn't pray for a killer to find my daughter. I prayed for someone kind. Her eyes held his. You're kind, Ethan Gray. Don't let him take that from you. Ethan's hand loosened. Slowly, he stood, stepped back. Sheriff Grant arrived, having heard the gunshots from town. William Crawford, you're under arrest for attempted murder. William was taken away, defeated, broken, truly finished. Weeks later, Grant brought news. William faced charges in Dakota Territory, attempted murder, conspiracy, assault. He was looking at 10 years in territorial prison. He'll probably die there, Grant said quietly. Men like him don't do well behind bars. And he did. 3 years later, in 1885, William Crawford died of pneumonia in a territorial prison. Sarah received the news without comment. No relief, no satisfaction, no pity, just a sense of closure. A chapter finally ended. I thought I'd feel something, she said to Ethan that evening. Instead, I just feel free, completely, finally free. No more looking over your shoulder. No more fear. No more fear. Spring came to Frost Ridge like a promise kept. The snow melted slowly, revealing earth that had been frozen for months. The days grew longer, the air grew warmer, and the Gray family began building their future. Ethan closed the deal on the 40 acres in late March. It was good land, flat enough for farming with a creek running through for water and a gentle rise where a house could sit and watch the sunset. It's perfect, Sarah breathed when Ethan first brought her to see it. It's dirt and grass right now, but it'll be perfect. Give me time. We have time now. She squeezed his hand. All the time in the world. They broke ground on the house in April. Half the town turned out to help. Men who'd stood with them against William, women who'd welcomed Sarah into their community, children who'd started learning their letters from Mrs. Gray's informal teaching sessions. "You don't have to do this," Ethan told Samuel, as the older man helped frame the walls. "You've done enough already." "Done enough," Samuel laughed. "Son, I've been waiting 60 years to see a man stand up for what's right the way you did. Helping you build a house is the least I can do." "I just did what anyone would do." "No." Samuel's eyes were serious. "You did what few men would dare. That woman of yours, she was drowning when you found her. Drowning in fear and pain and hopelessness. You threw her a rope. You pulled her to shore, and then you stood between her and the storm that was trying to drag her back under." He paused. "That's not nothing, Ethan Gray. That's everything." The house took shape through the spring months. 4 rooms more than they needed now, but Ethan was building for the future. A kitchen, a main room, 2 bedrooms, space to grow, space to breathe. Sarah watched it rise with wonder in her eyes. "I never had a home before," she told Ethan one evening as they sat on the half-finished porch. "Not really. My father's house was his, not mine. William's house was a prison. But this," she gestured at the rising frame, "this is ours. Ours." She tested the word like it was something precious. "I never thought I'd have an ours. Never thought I'd have a partner who built things with me instead of tearing me down." Ethan pulled her close. "Get used to it. We've got a lot of building ahead of us." Emma was walking properly now, running everywhere her little legs could carry her. She'd claimed the homestead as her kingdom, toddling across the grass, picking wildflowers, chattering away in a language that grew clearer every day. "Papa?" She ran to Ethan whenever he appeared, arms outstretched, face bright with chew. The words still hit him like a punch every time. "Hey, little one." He swung her up, settling her on his hip. "What did you find today?" Emma showed him a dandelion, crushed but precious. "That's beautiful. You going to give it to Mama?" "Mama." Emma squirmed to get down, toddling off towards Sarah with her treasure clutched tight. Ethan watched her go, his chest aching with a feeling he still couldn't quite name. Was this what happiness felt like? This fullness? This completeness? This sense that everything was exactly where it should be? He'd spent 17 years convinced he didn't deserve this. Didn't deserve roots, or family, or love. He'd believed he was meant to drift, to pass through without leaving marks or taking them. One baby's cry in a blizzard had changed everything. Fall brought a change that shifted their world again. Sarah had been feeling poorly for weeks. Tired, nauseated, emotional in ways that didn't make sense. Ethan worried, remembering her condition when he'd found her fearing some delayed effect of that terrible journey. Doc Bennett put those fears to rest with a smile. "Congratulations, Mrs. Gray. You're expecting." Sarah stared at him. "I'm what?" "Pregnant. About 2 months along, I'd say. Baby should arrive in late spring." Ethan felt the world tilt sideways. "A baby. That's typically what pregnant means, Mr. Gray." Bennett grinned. "You might want to sit down. You've gone a bit pale." "A baby," Ethan repeated. "Our baby." Sarah burst into tears. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm crying. I'm happy. I'm so happy. But I can't stop." "That's normal." Bennett patted her shoulder. "Happens with pregnancy. Your husband looks like he might need some water, though." Ethan was in fact having trouble breathing. A baby, his baby, a child born of love instead of obligation, wanted instead of endured, welcomed instead of feared. "Ethan," Sarah's voice cut through his shock. "Is this okay? Are you happy about this?" "Okay, Mom." He looked at her, this woman who'd survived so much, overcome so much, who now carried new life inside her. "Sarah, this is everything." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "We're having a baby, a real baby, a brother or sister for Emma, a family. We're already a family, a bigger family." He pulled back to look at her, his hands cradling her face. "I love you. I love you so much I don't have words for it. And I'm going to love this baby the same way I love Emma, with everything I have." "I know." Sarah kissed him through her tears. "I know you will. That's why I'm not scared, not even a little." Winter of their second year in Frost Ridge was different from the first. This time, Ethan watched the snow fall with wonder instead of dread. This time, the cold meant evenings by the fire with his family, not desperate rides through blizzards. This time, winter was something to be savored, not survived. Emma was talking in full sentences now, her vocabulary expanding daily, her personality emerging in delightful ways. She was stubborn, Ethan noticed, determined. She knew what she wanted and went after it with single-minded focus. She's like you, Sarah observed one evening, watching Emma refuse to give up on a puzzle that was clearly too advanced for her. She's like you, Ethan countered. I saw that stubbornness when you stood up to William, when you testified in court, when you faced him down in front of the whole town. Maybe she's like both of us, Sarah said with a smile. God help us all. The Christmas came with the first real celebration the Gray family had ever known. They hosted dinner at the homestead. Nettie, Doc Bennett, Samuel Sheriff Grant, and a dozen others who'd become something like extended family. The house was full of laughter and warmth and the chaos of too many people in too small a space. Ethan stood in the doorway watching it all, feeling something swell in his chest. Penny for your thoughts. Sarah appeared beside him, her belly just starting to show beneath her dress. Just thinking about how different this is. Last Christmas I was in Montana sleeping in a bunkhouse with a dozen other cowboys. Nobody to care if I lived or died. And now I've got all this. He gestured at the crowded room. A home, a family, friends, more than I ever thought I'd have. Do you miss it? The drifting? Not for a second. He pulled her close, his hand settling on her belly. I found what I was looking for. Didn't even know I was looking for it until it found me. We found each other. Sarah rested her head on his shoulder. In the worst possible circumstances, and somehow it turned into this. That's how it works sometimes. The worst moments lead to the best ones. Spring came again, and with it, new life. The baby arrived on a warm April morning after a long night of labor that tested everyone's nerves. Ethan paced the porch like a caged animal, while Doc Bennett and Nettie attended Sarah inside. Emma, now almost 3 years old, clung to his leg and refused to let go. It's okay, little one, Ethan kept telling her. Mama's okay. Everything's okay. He wasn't sure he believed it himself. Then came the cry. Not Sarah's, the baby's. That strong, healthy wail that split the morning air and brought Ethan to his knees. Mr. Gray, Nettie appeared in the doorway, her face tired but beaming. Come meet your son. His son. Ethan carried Emma inside, both of them trembling. Sarah lay in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle against her chest. She looked up when Ethan entered, and her smile made everything else disappear. Come here, she said softly. Come meet Cole. Cole, Ethan's voice cracked. Cole. Cole Ethan Gray, so there's no doubt who his father is. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, Emma still in his arms, and looked down at his son. The baby was perfect. Tiny fingers. Tiny toes. A face scrunched up with the effort of existing. He's beautiful, Ethan managed. He looks like you. Poor kid, Sarah laughed weakly. He's lucky he has you for a father. Emma leaned over to peer at the baby. Brother. That's right, sweetheart. Your baby brother. Hi, brother. Emma patted the baby's head gently. I'm Emma. Ethan felt tears streaming down his face. He didn't bother to wipe them away. This was his family. This woman who'd walked through hell to find safety. This daughter who'd called him to her with her cries. This son who bore his name. This life they'd built from nothing but determination and love. 2 years ago, he'd been a drifter, with no purpose, no ties, no future. Now he had everything. The years unfolded like pages in a book. Cole grew from a baby into a toddler, into a boy with his father's eyes and his mother's stubbornness. Emma grew into a young woman who helped her mother teach at the school, who had her father's quiet strength and her mother's fierce heart. The homestead expanded, more land, more cattle, more buildings until the Gray spread was one of the most respected in the territory. Sarah's school became legendary. Students came from 3 counties away to learn from Mrs. Gray, the woman who made learning an adventure. She trained other teachers. She wrote curriculum. She turned Frost Ridge into an unlikely center of frontier education. Ethan never drifted again. Now, 15 years after that desperate winter, he sat on his porch with his grandson, young Cole, who shared his father's name and told the story of how it all began. Grandpa, what happened to William? The boy asked. Territorial prison, 10 years for attempted murder. He died there in 1885. Pneumonia. Do you ever think about that night, about what you almost did every day? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Your grandmother saved me from becoming something I'd have regretted. That's what love does, Cole. It makes you better than you thought you could be. Sarah appeared in the doorway. 41 now, her hair streaked with silver, but still beautiful. Still strong. Emma stood beside her, now 16 and helping run the school that had become her mother's legacy. 3 generations. A family that had started with a baby's cry in a blizzard and a cowboy's choice to stop. You asked how I met your grandmother, Ethan said to his grandson. Truth is, I wasn't looking for her. I was just a man riding through a storm. But when I heard Emma crying, I made a choice. And that choice made me into the man sitting here today. Remember that, boy. We're all just one choice away from the life we're meant to live. Sarah came out and sat beside him. Their hands found each other automatically, the way they had for 15 years. I love you, Ethan Gray, she said. I love you, Sarah Gray. The family went inside for supper. Ethan and Sarah lingered on the porch holding hands, watching the sun set over the land they'd built together. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd ridden past that day? Sarah asked. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes. Then I look at this. He gestured at the ranch, the family, the life they'd created. And I know I wasn't riding through that storm by accident. I was supposed to be there. Supposed to find you. You believe in fate now. I believe in choices. And I believe sometimes if you're paying attention, you get one chance to make the choice that changes everything. I heard your daughter crying. I chose to stop. That choice gave me everything. You gave us everything too. They sat together as the stars emerged. 2 people who'd been broken, 2 people who'd been lost, 2 people who'd found each other in the worst possible moment and built the best possible life. That was the truth of Ethan and Sarah Gray. That was their legacy. And it all started with a choice. A simple, impossible, life-changing choice to stop in a blizzard when a baby cried out for help. Sometimes the smallest decisions create the biggest destinies. Sometimes a stranger becomes family. Sometimes love finds you in the snow. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to reach for it, second chances become forever.